My name is Naomi Reyes. I'm 38 years old, and for 12 years I've made my living finding the one number on a shipping invoice that doesn't add up. I'm a trade compliance investigator. Customs agencies hire me to look at a stack of import paperwork and tell them what's actually inside the crate, not what the label claims. I can read a customs declaration the way other people read a face, and know within minutes when someone's lying to a government about what just crossed a border. That Saturday, sitting at a reception table under string lights, I had two things I hadn't told a single person in my family. The first was a printout, folded twice, tucked inside my clutch. 4 lines of shipping data that shouldn't have existed under our company's name. The second was the fact that the bank's own compliance officer was seated at table 6, 3 feet from the cake, sipping champagne, with absolutely no idea what she was about to be handed. Nobody at that wedding knew either thing. They didn't know what I'd found that morning in my father's office, and they had no idea their own paperwork was about to speak for me. Welcome back to her final chapter, where every story starts with silence and ends with power. If you've ever been asked to put your name on something you didn't fully understand, just to keep the peace, this one's for you. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and let's get into it. It started, like most quiet wars in families, with an invitation that made a demand feel like an honor. I grew up above a storefront on Alvarado Street, Reyes and Sons Imports, though there had only ever been one son, my half-brother Dominic, and one daughter, me, who nobody ever bothered to put on the sign. My father, Ernesto Reyes, built the business from a card table at a swap meet into a real showroom, selling imported watches and jewelry, the kind of place where regulars called him by his first name, and he remembered their anniversaries better than they did. I have a habit that used to make me the most boring person at any dinner party until I learned to just own it. I read paperwork the way some people read tarot cards, country of origin codes, declared values, harmonized tariff schedule numbers. My husband Miguel calls it my customs superpower, the way I can glance at an invoice and know, before I've consciously worked out why, that a number is wrong. It's not intuition. It's 12 years of training, a federal certification, and a stack of fraud cases I helped build that put 3 companies out of business for false declarations. I left the family store at 22, not out of anger, just direction. I wanted the kind of work where the truth mattered more than the relationship. My father took it, for years, as a quiet insult. "You'd rather work for the government than for your own blood," he told me once, only half joking. I never fully believed he'd forgiven me for it. My stepmother, Carla, married my father when I was 17 and Dominic was 3. She was warm to me the way a landlord is warm to a tenant who pays on time. Pleasant, transactional, careful never to spend more warmth than the relationship required. Over 21 years, the store had become entirely Dominic's inheritance in every conversation, in every plan, in every sentence that started with, "When your brother takes over." I didn't resent that, not really. I had my own career, my own name on my own reports. I told myself the store had never really been mine to lose. I should have known that a family who needs your signature doesn't always need your love first. Sometimes they need it the other way around. The call came from my father on a Wednesday afternoon, while I was standing in a customs warehouse comparing a container manifest against a stack of commercial invoices that didn't match. "Naomi, mija, I need to ask you something, and I need you to say yes before you think about it too hard." He laughed the way he always did before asking for something big. "Dominic's getting married in 3 weeks, small thing at the Botanical Gardens, and afterward, we're finally doing the refinancing on the store, getting a real bank loan, expanding the Vegas location. We just need a personal guarantee. A co-signer, someone the bank trusts." "Dad, why would the bank need me for that? Dominic's the one running the business." "You're a Reyes too," he said, and something in his voice went soft in a way that used to work on me when I was younger. "It's just a formality. The bank likes to see family behind family. You sign, we celebrate at the wedding, everybody's happy." I told him I'd think about it. He said there wasn't much time to think. The loan officer wanted to finalize paperwork while everyone's together, easier that way, and the wedding was the easiest place for everyone to be together. "You're a Reyes, too." He'd used that phrase on me for 20 years. The year I didn't want to work weekends at the store as a teenager, the year I chose a customs internship over a summer at the register, the year I told him I wasn't coming back after college. Every time I drew a boundary, that phrase arrived like a toll booth, asking me to pay my way back into belonging. I hung up and sat very still in a warehouse that smelled like cardboard and diesel, staring at a manifest that didn't match its invoices, thinking about a completely different kind of paperwork waiting for me at my brother's wedding. Here's the part I never said out loud, not even to Miguel, for a long time. When I left the store at 22, it wasn't really about ambition. It was about being tired of being the daughter who worked the hardest for the least recognition. I did the store's bookkeeping from age 15, sitting at the same card table my father started the business on, teaching myself accounting from library books, because we couldn't afford a real bookkeeper. I caught 2 vendor overcharges before I turned 18, saving my father, by his own count, almost $9,000 over 3 years. He thanked me each time with the same phrase, "That's my girl." And then, the following Christmas, gave Dominic, who was 11 and had done nothing but unwrap presents, an engraved pocket watch for the future owner of Reyes and Sons. I told myself it didn't matter. Dominic was the son. There was an old country logic to it that I understood even as it hollowed me out a little more each year. When I graduated with my compliance certification at 26, my father didn't come to the small office ceremony. There was a store inventory that weekend, he said, and Dominic needed help. When Dominic got his real estate license at 23, my father closed the store for a day and threw a party with a banner. I never confronted him. That's the part I understand best now, looking back. Every year I told myself, he still calls me every Sunday. He still asks about my cases, even if he doesn't understand half of what I do. I built an entire internal ledger of small proofs that I still counted, because the alternative, actually tallying the whole thing honestly, would have told me something about my place in that family I wasn't ready to know. The truth underneath all of it is smaller and more embarrassing than principle. I still wanted, at 38, married, successful, established in a career my father barely understood. I still wanted him to look at me the way he looked at Dominic just once, without a transaction attached to it. That's the wound Carla's phone call reopened. That's the wound my father's "You're a Reyes too" was aimed straight at, whether he meant it cruelly or not. So when the ask came, sign this, be here, be family, some old, unhealed part of me wanted so badly to believe it was finally an invitation and not another assignment. I told Miguel that night, standing in our kitchen while he chopped onions for dinner he'd insisted on making because I looked exhausted. "Don't sign anything," he said, before I'd even gotten to the part about the wedding. "I mean it, Naomi. A personal guarantee means the bank comes after your assets if that business defaults. Your house, your accounts, not Dominic's, not your father's, yours." "It's a formality," Dad said. "Banks don't ask for formalities that put your name on a lien." He set the knife down. "You do this exact kind of investigation for a living. You know what it means when someone wants a signature fast at an event with no time to actually read the documents." "It's my brother's wedding, Miguel." "That's not a reason. That's the reason to be more careful, not less." He wiped his hands on a dish towel, looking at me the way he does when he loves me and is about to say something I won't like. "You're going to go read the paperwork before you decide anything, aren't you?" "I have to see the actual loan terms before I'm standing in front of a notary with 150 guests watching." "Then look at everything. Everything, Naomi, before you walk into that reception." He pulled me into a hug that smelled like onions and dish soap. "Promise me that." I promised him. I didn't yet understand how much that promise was about to matter. The gap between what was promised and what was real, Carla had called it a small thing at the botanical gardens. When Miguel and I arrived that Saturday at 4, there were 210 chairs set in white rows, a 12-piece band setting up under a floral arch that must have cost more than my first car, and a catering staff of at least 15 circulating with trays before the ceremony had even started. A custom neon sign glowing behind the sweetheart table read, "Reyes and Sons, 2 generations strong." I stood there a long moment, reading that second half of the sign. "Small thing," Miguel murmured beside me. He didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. Sensory contrast, the worn and the performed. Before the ceremony, I slipped into the garden's small administrative office my father had rented as a staging room, looking for my father's reading glasses, which I'd found folded in his jacket at the rehearsal and wanted to return before he needed them for the vows. On the desk sat his old leather portfolio, the one with the strap he'd re-glued with rubber cement because he refused to replace it, shoved into a corner beneath a fresh stack of glossy loan documents bearing the bank's crisp blue letterhead. Beside them, An open bottle of champagne, I'd guess, professionally, at $400, chilling in a silver bucket clearly meant for the signing toast. I stood there with his cracked old portfolio in one hand and a $400 bottle in the other, and understood, with total clarity, that I was standing inside a stage built for exactly one purpose. What I found alone, curiosity, professional habit more than suspicion, made me open the loan documents. Attached behind the guarantee page was a packet I hadn't expected. Recent shipping records for Reyes and Sons import account, stapled together as supporting collateral documentation for the bank. I recognized the format instantly. Commercial invoices, customs declarations, HS tariff codes. I told myself I had 5 minutes before someone would come looking for the missing reading glasses. I photographed every page. The declared values on 6 recent shipments of fashion watches were listed at $40 per unit, the exact threshold under which certain enhanced inspections don't automatically trigger. But the accompanying commercial correspondence, tucked further back in the file, referenced brand names I recognized from 3 federal counterfeit cases I'd worked in the last 2 years. Luxury watch replicas, imported under deliberately generic tariff codes, declared at a fraction of even a legitimate low-cost import's value. And at the bottom of the customs power of attorney form authorizing the import broker to file on the company's behalf. A signature. My signature. Naomi Reyes, dated 8 months earlier, on a form I had never seen, for an authorization I had never given. I knew it was wrong in under 4 seconds, the way you know a stranger's voice on the phone isn't who they claim to be. I signed my middle initial with a closed loop, always, every time, a habit from a childhood signature forging game my father himself used to play with me at that same card table, testing whether I could copy his handwriting. This signature's loop was open. The pressure was too even, too careful, the mark of someone copying a shape rather than writing a name they'd written 10,000 times before. It was good. It was very good. It was not mine. 3 small, cruel comments, landing like bricks. Back in the reception line, balancing a champagne flute I had no intention of finishing, Carla's sister Rosa found me near the gift table. "You look tense, Naomi. Is government work really that stressful, or is it just hard watching your little brother finally surpass you?" She laughed like she'd offered me a compliment. 10 minutes later, Dominic's new father-in-law, a real estate developer I'd met exactly once, shook my hand and said, "So you're the one with the government job. Must be nice having something stable while Dominic takes the real risk, building something of his own." The word real landed with a small, deliberate weight. And then Rosa again, refilling her glass, not bothering to lower her voice. "Some people build a family legacy, other people just show up to sign for it." She smiled at me over the rim of her glass like she'd said something clever instead of something designed to cut. I didn't respond to any of it. I was doing math in my head, declared values, tariff codes, the exact language of federal statute on customs fraud, and the fact that a forged signature with my name on it now sat inside a folder 3 feet from a bank compliance officer sipping champagne at table 6. The second use of the phrase at 6:30, my father gathered close family near the sweetheart table for what he called just a quick toast before the signing, and motioned for me to come stand beside him. "Naomi," he said, one hand warm and heavy on my shoulder, performing warmth for an audience of over 200. "This business is everything I built for this family. And today, with Dominic starting his own family, it feels right to finally make sure it's protected for the next generation." He turned to the crowd, smiling. "You're a Reyes, too. This isn't just Dominic's name on that sign. It's yours. So let's make it official, together, right now." 200 faces turned toward me. Somewhere near the band, I saw Dominic look down at his shoes. I felt the folded printout inside my clutch, the 4 lines of shipping data I'd photographed less than 2 hours earlier. I hadn't planned to need it yet. I was about to need it sooner than I thought. Stay with me, because what happened next, I'd already planned out standing alone in that staging office, in the 5 minutes it took to photograph 4 pages of paper I was never supposed to see. My father produced the guarantee document himself, right there beside the cake table, with the practiced ease of a man who'd rehearsed this exact moment. A notary stood ready beside him, a woman I didn't recognize, holding her stamp with a small ceremonial flourish, clearly briefed to expect this to take 90 seconds. We just need your signature here, mija, my father said, sliding the guarantee page across a linen-covered table someone had cleared specifically for this. Standing behind your family. Standing behind the name. He tapped the loan packet sitting open beside it for effect. The bank's ready. Everyone's here. Let's not make this complicated. His voice dropped, gentle, final. You're a Reyes too, Naomi. 3 times now, third and final. The crowd near the cake table had gone quiet in that specific way a room goes quiet when it senses a performance reaching its climax. Somewhere behind me, the band's saxophone player let a note trail off and didn't pick the next one up. I looked at the guarantee. I looked at the notary, already uncapping her stamp, and past her, at the woman in the pale blue blazer sitting at table 6 who I now recognized, from a company badge clipped discreetly to her clutch, as the bank's compliance officer. I let the silence sit. 1 second, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nobody moved. My father's smile, held that long without anything happening behind it, began very slightly to strain at the corners, the first honest thing his face had done all evening. I reached into my own clutch, not for a pen. I set my phone on the linen table, screen up, and pulled up the photograph I'd taken 2 hours earlier of the exact customs power of attorney form currently sitting 3 pages beneath the guarantee my father wanted me to sign. Before I sign anything, I said, and I made sure my voice carried the way it does across a warehouse floor, calm, level, unhurried. I'd like everyone here to look at something with me. I do this professionally, and I noticed a problem about 2 hours ago. My father's hand twitched toward the folder. Naomi, now really isn't the... It'll take 30 seconds, I said, not unkindly, and I turned my phone toward the small crowd, my own real signature from a federal disclosure form pulled up beside it. This is my actual signature. I close my middle initial loop. Every time for 20 years, it's a habit from a game my own father taught me as a kid. I traced it in the air. This one, I said, pointing to the power of attorney form, has the loop open. It's a careful copy, not a forgery good enough to survive a professional comparison, but good enough that nobody here was ever supposed to look closely. The notary's flourish pen had stopped moving entirely. Signatures change over time, my father said, too fast. You've probably signed 100 different ways. I have, I agreed. None of them open that loop. Not once, in 12 years of federal filings. I swiped to the next photo. This is the customs power of attorney authorizing an import broker to file declarations on behalf of Reyes and Sons, using my forged signature, on shipments of watches declared at $40 a unit, under the threshold that avoids automatic enhanced inspection. I let that land. I'd like someone to explain that number to me. My father tried again. A second attempt, thinner this time. Those are standard fashion watches, Naomi. Low-cost imports. That's just the honest value. Then why, I asked, keeping my voice level, does the correspondence attached to this same file reference 3 brand names I've personally investigated in federal counterfeit cases in the last 2 years? I turned, not toward my father now, but toward table 6. Ms. Alvarez, I believe that's your compliance badge. I don't think anyone briefed you that the collateral shipping documentation behind this loan guarantee includes a forged authorization and undervalued customs declarations for what appear to be counterfeit luxury goods. The compliance officer set down her champagne flute very slowly, like it had gotten heavy. My father tried a third time, reaching for the folder itself now, physically, as though he could simply take the evidence back into his own hands and make the last 2 minutes not have happened. You're twisting a business arrangement, Naomi. You always do this. You always have to make everything into some kind of investigation. I'm not twisting anything, I said, and for the first time all evening, I let my voice go quiet instead of carrying, because I've learned in 12 years of federal casework that quiet is what actually lands. I photographed this document 2 hours ago in the staging office. I haven't reported it to anyone yet. I wanted to give you the chance to tell me the truth before I had to decide what my job actually requires of me here. I looked around at the faces I'd known my whole life, and several I'd never seen before. I don't owe this family a signature today. I never did. What I owe is not putting my name, forged or otherwise, on something that could end with federal agents at that store instead of customers. I picked my phone back up off the table. My hand, I noticed distantly, had gone completely steady. Ms. Alvarez, I said, turning to her, I'd recommend your bank hold this loan pending its own review. I'm happy to walk you through exactly what I found, whenever you're ready. Ms. Alvarez called me herself the following Monday, from a conference room, her voice carefully professional. Ms. Reyes, I need everything you photographed, today. This loan is frozen pending a full compliance review, and depending on what your father's broker actually filed with customs, this may already be outside the bank's hands. By the following week, Federal Customs had opened a formal inquiry into Reyes and Sons' import filings. The broker my father had hired, a man named Felix, referred to him 2 years earlier by an acquaintance of Dominic's, had been quietly underdeclaring shipment values and using a signature stamp of mine he'd apparently kept on file from an old vendor authorization I'd signed once, years before, and never thought about again. He lost his customs broker license within the month. My father hired an attorney of his own, who, from what Dominic later told me, spent their first meeting mostly asking whether there was any way to make the inquiry just go away quietly. There wasn't. The Vegas expansion loan collapsed entirely. The original store stayed open, but only after my father personally repaid the bank's initial disbursement and agreed to a multi-year compliance monitoring arrangement that Ms. Alvarez, to her credit, fought to make survivable rather than punitive. I want to be honest about what I felt watching my father's face go gray beside that cake table, because it would be easy to tell you it felt like vindication, and it didn't, not entirely. It felt like relief with a bruise underneath it. I didn't want to be right about this. I would have traded every bit of professional satisfaction in that moment for a version of my father's business where nobody had ever needed to forge my name to keep it running. The quieter moment came 3 weeks later, at my parents' kitchen table, the same one I'd done bookkeeping on as a teenager. Dominic showed up unannounced on a Tuesday evening, sat down across from me, and slid an old photo across the table. The two of us, maybe 9 and 13, sitting on the store's front step eating popsicles, my father's arm around both our shoulders. I didn't know about Felix, he said quietly. Not until it was already in the loan file. I should have asked more questions before the wedding. I didn't want to know the answer. He didn't defend our father. He didn't ask me for anything. He just sat there and let the silence be honest, which, of everyone in that family, was maybe the first time anyone had managed that in 20 years. I believed him. Not because I'm naive, because I've spent my whole career learning to tell the difference between someone performing regret and someone actually carrying it. His hands were shaking around his coffee cup. That doesn't fake well. Here's what I learned, standing beside a wedding cake with a forged signature glowing on my phone screen. A family name isn't something you're owed for existing inside it. It's something that has to actually be built to hold your weight, the same way it holds everyone else's. And nobody who truly wants you in the family needs to forge your name to get it there. That's my story. If it meant something to you, drop a comment and tell me. I read every one. And if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe to her final chapter, because there's another one waiting for you next week.